The evacuation order said the system had 11 hours left. Pilot Renata Osei-Vasquez had already decided she wasn't leaving on schedule. The star was called Threnna, a yellow dwarf 80 light-years past the ascending corridor's furthest relay station, orbited by one inhabited world and 40,000 people who'd built a life there over 3 generations, without anyone telling them the star had a problem until 11 days ago. 11 days. That's how much warning the survey data gave before someone finally noticed the core readings didn't match any stable model anymore. Threnna was going to collapse into something nobody had a clean name for, not quite a supernova, not quite anything in the textbooks, just an unstable giant tearing itself apart faster than any star its size should. The Compact's astrophysics division had 3 competing models for exactly when it would happen. None of them agreed on the hour. All of them agreed it would happen soon. The evacuation fleet had 6 days to move 40,000 people off a single world using 9 ships, most of them cargo haulers never designed to carry passengers. All of them now stripped down and reconfigured into the fastest evacuation effort anyone in the ascending corridor had ever run. Renata flew the Constant Star, the smallest and fastest ship in the fleet, which made her the natural choice for the final sweep. The last pass through the system to confirm every settlement, every outpost, every research station had been cleared before the fleet committed to the jump that would take them out of range before anyone knew exactly when the collapse would hit. The official evacuation manifest said everyone was accounted for. Renata didn't trust manifests built in 6 days under that kind of pressure. She was 36 years old, the granddaughter of Yusuf Webb, who talked an armed Theranval crew out of attacking an unarmed ship by telling them a story about a name. She'd grown up hearing that story so many times it had stopped being remarkable to her and started being simply how things were done in her family. You didn't leave a situation until you were certain there was nothing left to do in it. The fleet commander, a careful man named Director Osei, who'd run logistics for the entire operation, told her flatly that the final sweep was a formality. Every settlement had confirmed evacuation. Every outpost had checked in. The manifest was complete. She told him she was running the sweep anyway. He said the fleet couldn't wait for her if she found something. The jump window was tight, and the models gave them a margin of hours, not days. She said she understood. She took the Constant Star back down through the system's outer debris field while the rest of the fleet held position at the jump point. 11 hours theoretically left on the clock. Nobody fully trusting that number, everybody watching it anyway. The first 4 settlements checked out exactly as the manifest said. Empty, sealed, confirmed, clear. The 5th was a small mining outpost on the system's second moon. Population listed as 14. Evacuation confirmed 3 days ago according to the manifest. Something about the confirmation timestamp bothered her. 3 days ago meant the outpost had been cleared before the evacuation effort had even finished organizing transport for the larger settlements. That was either very efficient, or it meant nobody had gone back to double-check after the initial confirmation, because there'd been 40,000 more urgent people to move, and a dying star giving everyone 11 days that had already become 11 hours. She brought the Constant Star down low over the outpost anyway. Sensors clean, no heat signatures, no life signs. She almost pulled up and called it confirmed. Then she saw the comm tower. It was still transmitting. A low, automated, repeating signal, not a distress call, nothing dramatic, just the outpost's standard operational beacon still running on backup power. The kind of signal that would keep broadcasting for weeks after a facility was abandoned and nobody had bothered to shut it down. Except the manifest said this outpost had been fully powered down during evacuation. Every system, including the beacon, standard procedure. One more thing checked off a very long list 3 days ago by someone moving as fast as they possibly could. A beacon that should be dead and wasn't. She didn't know what that meant yet, but her grandfather hadn't known exactly why a story about a ship's name would change an armed crew's mind either. He'd known there was something there worth checking before he found out what it was. Oh, she landed. The outpost was exactly as empty as the sensors said. No bodies. No survivors hiding in a back room. Just an abandoned mining facility with a beacon that shouldn't have been running, transmitting into a system with maybe 10 hours left on a clock nobody fully trusted. She traced the power line back through the facilities systems and found the actual problem in about 4 minutes. A manual override switch, flipped to keep the beacon active, in a small maintenance room that the evacuation checklist hadn't required anyone to enter, because the checklist only required confirming the facility was cleared, not confirming every system inside it was actually shut down the way the manifest said it was. A clerical gap, the kind that happens when 40,000 lives need moving in 6 days, and the people doing the moving are running on borrowed time and very little sleep. She flipped the switch off. She was turning to leave when she heard something that wasn't sensor data. A voice, faint, scratchy, coming from a handheld radio sitting on a workbench in the same maintenance room, set to a local frequency. The evacuation fleet's communications hadn't been monitoring because the outpost's official channels had already been logged as silent. It said, anyone receiving, this is Havard at Relay Node 3, anyone receiving. She grabbed the radio. This is Pilot Osei-Vasquez, UEDF Evacuation Fleet. I read you. Identify your location. A pause that felt much longer than it probably was. The voice said, Relay Node 3, the Deep Survey Outpost, 6 kilometers north of the mining facility. There are 4 of us. We've been trying every channel for 2 days. We thought everyone had already left. Renata felt something cold settle into her chest, because Relay Node 3 wasn't on the evacuation manifest at all. Not confirmed cleared, not confirmed anything. It simply didn't exist as a location anyone had been tracking because it had been established 8 months ago as an unofficial deep survey site, run by a small independent research team that hadn't filed updated registration with the colony's central administration before the evacuation crisis hit. 4 people the manifest had never known to look for. I'm coming to you, stay on this channel. She flew the 6 kilometers in under 3 minutes, found the relay node exactly where the voice said it would be, and found 4 research scientists who had spent 2 days watching evacuation ships pass overhead in the distance, transmitting on every channel they had, getting no response, slowly understanding that they had been left behind by a system that didn't know they existed. They didn't ask her how she'd found them. She didn't have a clean answer anyway. A beacon that shouldn't have been running, a name on a manifest that didn't match the timestamp, a grandfather's story about checking when the checklist said not to bother. She got all 4 of them aboard the Constant Star, lifted off the second moon, and called the fleet to report what she'd found. Director Osei's voice came back tight and fast. We have a jump window closing in under 2 hours. The model's just revised downward again. Can you make rendezvous? I'm already moving, ETA 40 minutes. Make it 40, we can't hold past the window. Oh, she made it in 38. The fleet jumped out of the Threnna system 4 hours before the collapse, by the most optimistic of the 3 competing models, and 90 minutes before it, by the most pessimistic. Nobody ever knew which model had been right, because by the time anyone could have checked, there was nothing left in that system to check it against. What they did know was that the final headcount, after every ship docked at the relay station and every passenger was processed, came to 40,004. 4 people who weren't on any manifest. 4 people who existed in the official records of that evacuation only because a pilot had decided a checklist saying cleared wasn't the same thing as actually checking. and had taken the time to make sure of the difference with hours instead of days to spare. Director Osei found her on the relay station 2 days later, after the reports were filed, and the relief had started to feel like something other than adrenaline. The manifest said the mining outpost was clear. Why'd you land? The beacon was still running. It shouldn't have been. Well, that's it, a beacon. A beacon that didn't match what the paperwork said happened. That's enough of a reason to look. It's usually enough. He looked at her for a long moment, the way people looked at her family sometimes when they were trying to figure out if the thing they just watched happen was instinct or training or something else entirely, and not quite landing on an answer. 4 people, we would have lost 4 people to a clerical gap nobody would have ever found, because there was nothing left in that system to go back and check. As I know. How did you know to check? She thought about her grandfather, on an unarmed relay tender 30 years before she was born, transmitting a story instead of a threat because it was the only thing he had that was true. She thought about the rest of her family's habit of looking twice at things everyone else had already called finished. I didn't know, I just didn't trust. 11 hours left, enough to leave anything unchecked that I had time to check. You almost didn't have time. I had enough. That evening, she wrote a letter the way her family always wrote the ones that mattered on paper slow. Because some things needed the weight of actually being written down instead of just transmitted. She wrote to her grandfather, who was 81 now and still kept every letter anyone in the family ever sent him, in a box that had never once gotten smaller. She wrote, "Grandfather, I made one more pass today than the manifest said I needed to. Found 4 people a checklist had forgotten existed. I kept thinking about your ship and the name and the story, and how you said it worked because it was true, not because it was clever. I think the same thing happened today. The truth was, the manifest said clear, and a beacon that shouldn't have been running said otherwise, and the only thing that mattered was which one I trusted more. I trusted the beacon. I think I trusted it because you taught me, a long time ago at the dinner table, that the situation is always more complete than it looks from where you're standing. 4 people are alive because I believed that. I wanted you to know it still holds. Your granddaughter's Renata's." The letter reached him 11 days later, printed at the small terminal in the house he still kept on the outskirts of the original ascending colony. In the evening, when the light was the specific gold that came right before the colony's longer dusk began. Oh, he read it twice. He thought about a choke point on a ridge years ago, a thermal anomaly nobody had flagged, 90 seconds of careful movement that found 6 fighters waiting in ambush before anyone walked into the kill zone. He thought about how the family's whole inheritance, generation after generation, came down to exactly one shared habit: not trusting the version of a situation that was easiest to believe when there was still time left to check the harder one. Well, he picked up his pen. He wrote back 4 words because some answers didn't need more than that. He wrote, "It always holds, good work." Well, he sent it. Then he sat for a while longer in the gold light, thinking about a beacon that shouldn't have been running and a granddaughter who'd trusted it anyway, and how the story would get told now at every dinner table in the family for years afterward. Not as legend, the way his own story sometimes felt to him now, but as the simplest possible lesson passed forward one more time. Don't check it twice. Leave nothing behind that you had time to find.